This is Craig and Andrew, two Ranger qualified Army officers with MBAs, here to help you improve your business through leadership.
Each week, we'll deliver easy lessons from the battlefield to the boardroom on how to improve team performance. If you're a leader or want to be, this is the place for you.
Welcome to the cohort.
Disclaimer: the views in this podcast are those of the authors alone and do not represent the views of the Department of Defense or the U.S. Army.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Command Post cohort. I'm really excited about the episode today. We're honored to have Vijay with us, a founder and entrepreneur, venture capitalist, executive coach, also an author of the funding framework. So really excited to have somebody with his experience and background to be able to talk about some leadership aspects that really speak to that startup world. And how does leadership affect us all as leaders inside of these challenging environments that startups face? And so, Vijay, just really excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Craig. This is a real delight. I'm looking forward to our conversation today with you and Andrew.
It's going to be great. I'm pretty excited to hear from all the startup background that you've got to give to my listeners here in Austin.
Fantastic.
And so, as you have experienced leadership in startups in the VC world and advising founders, as an executive coach and dealing with this, that relates a lot of times we talk about first time leaders. And maybe it's just something as simple as a manufacturing plant. And somebody was really good on a piece of equipment and now they've been put in charge of 3 or 4 people. And I feel like there may be some correlation there of someone as a founder who finds themselves, even if they have some leadership experience, as that thing starts to scale and grow, as you coach them through that, do you see those leadership challenges come out?
Yeah, for sure. What you described is in most business settings, you show like some technical or other proficiency and you know how to do something really well. Maybe you're a great engineer, maybe you're great at sales, right? And now you're put in charge of things and people.
Surprise.
Right? Yes. And it's a little bit different. It's a little bit of the opposite way in startups. You're actually not good at everything, but you're in charge of everything. And so I always say, when I meet founders who are, 2 or 3 people, maybe less than 20 people at their business, that they're the chief everything officer. They're not yet a chief executive anything.
Yeah.
And they kind of smile and laugh and they're like, yes, that's kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, we use the title and I understand why, but it means something so different in the early stages. So what does that mean? Yes, you're not good at everything, but you have extreme ownership over everything. And when you go from being like head of the product and essentially in charge of like administration and chief bottle washer and all of that, like you've got to, do a bunch of things like kind of okay and focus on at the beginning, what is like the one thing we need to get like really right and, have this singular focus on that. And that's really the 80-20 rule of the beginning of CEO leadership when you're a founder of a startup or any business on day one.
I love that you brought up the 80-20 rule. That's one of my favorite rules, and I see it all the time, over and over again. So you mentioned how you're the everything, the C everything O.
Yeah.
Right. When you're a founder, I feel like a lot of that is kind of correlational to the saying that necessity is the mother of invention. Right. Well, in this case, it seems to be that necessity is the mother of figuring it out. Right.
Yeah.
So because that's a pretty big kind of obstacle to overcome for somebody that just has a vision, right? So how can, as surprise your leader, right? Somebody with that great vision start to overcome some of those kind of unknown, unexpert obstacles.
Yeah, I like you're probably learning to do a bunch of new things. And this is where I found 3 real leadership moments and
I love it.
real coaching moments as a result, I find in working with the founders that I've gotten to know. And the first one is fundraising. The second is go-to-market or founder-led sales. And the third is building teams. Now, why those 3 things? You probably have not raised money before if you're a first-time founder. You probably haven't sold anything, or at least not sold this thing before. And you might need to be learning what sales looks like. And building teams is actually really hard. And building your company as opposed to like working in someone else's looks really different. So I have over my years worked with a large portfolio of startups and seen all kinds of different changes, including these proverbial questions that come back again and again, like when should we hire our head of sales? Or, need to have a marketer, or do I just kind of do this? What are the things that, we need a specialist for versus a generalist? And these questions come up again and again in the very early stages. Now, why do I bring all this up? It's because the need to fundraise, the need to sell, and the need to hire are all very key things that you can't strip away from the founder job description, and yet they're all learnable skills. We kind of think that fundraising is something, oh, you've got it or you don't, or these people are lucky, or when it comes to being a leader, like, oh, that person, they're a leader, or they know how to hire, but these are all things that you can grow into, and you can be exposed to what good looks like, and you can try on new things that allow you to build a success for your business. So that's why I think of the startup system as this combination of fundraising, go to market, and also building great teams.
Do you see out of the founders that you coach, because you see a lot of the similar challenges that everybody's facing, but you discuss those being as learnable skills, is there any commonality to maybe the growth mindset of those founders that really take to learning those skills and thriving in that environment versus maybe somebody who grew up with that idea that you either are good at sales or you're not, and there is no way to learn it?
You
Yeah.
either have the gift of gab or you don't, right? That's what I kept
Right.
hearing growing up.
Yeah. That's right. We all have strengths and gifts, and one of the assessments I've done with different folks that I've worked with is something called Working Genius, developed by the Table Group and Patrick Lencioni. And what I like about Working Genius is it's all about productivity, and it's a ranking of your gifts to your frustrations. So you have certain areas of genius, and you have certain areas of frustration. And so why do I bring that up? It doesn't. The thing about it is, let's say, Craig, your genius is invention, right? And one of your frustrations is wonder. There are 6 working geniuses, and they kind of go from wonder to tenacity. And, we can get into that. And let's say one of your other frustrations is enablement. Well, you might have a team that is looking for some direction. They need to be set up for success. This is a frustration of yours, and it's probably winds up as being a dysfunction in your team. It's probably, it's like you don't have a project plan for this thing yet, right? Like things are kind of running around, and people are kind of running around with their hair on fire. It would be the kit would. And what that means is, just because it's something that frustrates you, it doesn't mean that you have to be bad at it. It means that you have to work extra hard, or even better, you partner with somebody who complements you. Their frustration is your genius, and vice versa. And that I think is ideal. And it doesn't have to be a co-founder. It could be a junior person in your company who is just great at galvanizing. And and maybe you don't have the gift of gab. You don't like leading every meeting. It's exhausting, right? So knowing that about yourself is fine. How do you want to create systems and so forth to do those things? And show up when you have to do them, and figure out how to balance with and work with others, because this doesn't have to be a solo project. These are important things, therefore, to have a growth mindset. And your growth mindset, multiplied by just how long you're willing to try doing something, allows you to just increase that surface layer of opportunity until things do strike. And that is easier said than done, but that is generally what I have seen, is people who just are creating good luck and building their skills and getting better 1 or 2% every day, not overnight. I woke up and suddenly today I was able to fundraise perfectly. It's a process, and you learn. And I even suggest that build learning into your process. So in the funding framework, for which you alluded to, which is all about how there can be a system and a framework to raise money, you might use your first meetings with investors to meet the people who are kind of like your C tier or like less, or people you're less enthusiastic about potentially meeting, and just to get like feedback. Just to have your first meetings be opportunities to see how did that land? Like, let's try this out.
Yeah.
Like, if you are a stand-up comedian, you get good at stand-up comedy by going to a lot of different small clubs and trying out material and seeing what lands and what bombs before you go on stage for your HBO special. So like that is kind of what you're doing in fundraising. So if you have a growth mindset, you're like, hey, this is okay. We're just out here trying something out. We're trying to learn. And in the process of learning, suddenly you go from like, okay to great. And I've seen it happen time and time again, including among people who have never raised $1.
That's interesting. I think as as you bring up, how do you put a framework or process to the capital raising? I think that as leaders, a lot of times we can actually, empower our teams, but also make our lives a little bit easier the more we put to a framework and it's a process. And then it takes that guesswork out of it, because a lot of things, and I've seen this with a lot of, junior or new leaders, that everything looks like magic. And so it's, how do I make this happen? It's, how do I either close this deal or raise these funds, whatever the task is. If they don't have that experience in there, they're afraid that it's either they have it or they don't. They're going to, if they fail one time, then it's a done deal. But, I like that you bring up the idea of these frameworks and these processes, because I think that's something that, as leaders, we should always be coaching our team to utilize. And it's not like it's a crutch, it is a tool to simplify those processes and make sure that it's repeatable. Because you don't want it to be a lucky thing. You want to be able to do this repeatedly and it not be, well, I don't know what happened. The deal in Orlando went great, went to Miami, and it was a catastrophe. Like, that's not what you want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, you can't reflect back on things and learn if you don't know, like, did we get the right result for the wrong reason, or did we get the wrong result, but did we follow a good process? Like, because the only thing you can, measure and change and maybe control is like, what did we set out to do and how well did we do that? And so that's where any retro, any place where you look back on your, your OKRs or whatever you're doing, and maybe use the EOS, pick the system that you like. Some of us like to go to CrossFit. Other people want to like ride on a Peloton, whatever's your thing, right? Like, pick a system that makes you feel like you can keep with it. And then go back and reflect on, how did we do and what part of that would we do differently or repeat?
Yeah, that's great. One thing we talked about before is like, generally leadership is a person has a personality that fits on a leadership scale, generally, right? From like totally unengaged, socialism is not the right word, but like unengaged, kind of, minimum guidance kid and kind of let the clock work, so to speak. And then the other side, which is kind of authoritarianism, right? Very direct. So somewhere in the middle there, or somewhere on that scale, someone's going to naturally fall, and their unique skills and talents are going to align somewhere with, kind of one of the facets of running a business. And so I like how you talked about the growth mindset there, to get after the pieces that you're not so good at.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And so many people we now think of as legendary CEOs, but there was a period of time where they were not, running a good meeting. They didn't know how to get on stage and do an all hands. Some people had got fired from their first companies, but there are plenty of famous people who have had that experience. That is like part of the thing is those people got back in the saddle. They were desperate and motivated to try again. And what enabled them to do so was that mindset. One of the things I've seen though is, we talk about the Chief Everything Officer, and then the thing is you're doing all these things, you're creating these processes. What those processes are doing is allowing people to do work that less and less with your direct involvement. Like, you're still supporting them, but in a way that enables, and less of like prescribes or, is, perhaps more directive. So as you're you're doing that, you go from the chief everything officer to the chief enablement officer. That's when your company can actually grow and acquire scale. And the chief enablement officer is now someone who uses the tools, uses the dashboard, like thinks about these processes and like, okay, now here's how you can do that. Here's a thing. I'm not going to like completely turn my back on you, but I need to like understand what's missing for us to get to the next stage. This has been part of my own, leadership journey as well. Like one of the areas I found, I struggle with is enablement. And so it's like extra work for me. Even better though, is when I partner with someone on my team to like think things through and to get to that project plan or something like that. And then once you've gone to enablement, you then now you're managing not just people, but managers, and then maybe managers and managers. And now you start to look like an executive. And an executive, a chief executive officer, is someone who's there to make really high quality decisions, to own the culture and the strategy of the business. And at least until you're a public company or something like that one day, like make sure the business is sufficiently capitalized. And that's particularly true for startup founders. So that fundraising element stays around for a while.
So as you're coaching these founders through these different levels or just interacting with those that are their companies at different scale, do you find that as leaders learn these skills and learn how to manage these risks at the lower levels, when maybe that team is only 20 people, once that team is now 100 people, or now it's 2,000 people, do you see the leaders facing similar problems? Or do you like where it's circular, where they keep coming back to, hey, this is a communication friction point that I had to learn it then and I've kind of relearning it? Or do you find that as they scale up, there are different challenges that the leaders face?
Yeah. So I don't work with a lot of folks that are running 2,000 headcount companies. So most of the people I work with tend to have companies that are, more like somewhere between 20 and 100, right? Which nowadays can actually generate quite interesting outcomes as we've seen in the AI world.
Yeah.
What am I observing? It's that companies get bigger and then the Dunbar number kicks in. So at around we can have with about 150 people. Once you get between 50 and 150 people, the wheels aren't coming off, but they're getting kind of wobbly. Yeah. Like you're not sure, like who's this guy Vijay? What does he do? Like, what happened to this person? Right? Like that starts to come up, and that's what I hear. So what do you have to do? You replace like knowing everything that people are doing with this communication architecture. So what do we talk about in your staff meeting with your leads, with your senior leadership team? What happens in an all hands, and what is like the culture in which we share information in the company? And so that turns out to be a really good set of things that you actually like write down, and as opposed to let just kind of happen, because until you got to 50 people, it could just happen. And then I think that's where having this particular like communication system is useful.
That's such a great point, because is for that first line supervisor, like we talked about, right? You're stocking the shelves one day, the next day you come in and, hey, now you're the shift supervisor. Well, how does all this apply to me, right? I'm just starting my leadership journey. I don't need to know, the intent and ROI and all these decisions and all that. I always think about, don't work for the job you have, work for the job you want. So I feel like what you're talking about is starting to develop all those processes, learn about all those processes that could help you when you take the next step, right? When you become, when you go from 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 to 100, right?
Yeah.
Because
otherwise you're going to be drowning today if you don't develop the intuition for when you need to use some of those new tools and try them out and get good at them earlier.
Yeah, you're talking about the Dunbar number, and once you get to a certain number there, and it becomes challenging and you don't know everybody. It reminds me of the first time I was leading an organization of about a little over 200 people, And I remember walking through our company area and I saw somebody and they recognized me and I did not. And I felt really bad. I was like, how do I not know this person?
Yeah.
And so then I go and like talk with some of my colleagues and said, hey, who is this? Like, they're down there. They act like they work here. And
Act like they work here.
and so it turns out like they were brand new. That was their first day. But I had this like, personal dilemma because I always took pride in knowing my team and knowing everybody in the company. But then it was this moment of, wait a minute, now I'm leading an organization that's large enough to where somebody's first day, I'm not, unless I have a process. And so we addressed that. And so now we had a new process of when we had new people coming in,
Mm-hmm.
they would immediately like a meeting with me was now a part of it. Now it was an informal 5-10 minutes. Hey, what's your name? Nice to meet you. Glad to have you here. But I wanted to be able to recognize people and just be like, hey, it's good to see you today, and not be taken aback when I walk through and I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And, but that was that, and I'd forgotten about that until you mentioned it. But there is a point in leadership where you have to kind of realize you may not know everybody on a first name basis anymore to the level that you did when there were only 20 to 50 people. You can know pretty much everyone. And that's something that leaders have to anticipate. And then, how do you build it back into your process is important.
Yeah. But the way that you choose to onboard and get to know people and make people feel like they're part of the company is really important, because other people will either copy that or realize, you're not that interested in it. And so, so that filters down, as opposed to really celebrating, oh, this person is here. I remember arriving to work once at a company where no one knew if I was getting a laptop that day. And, it was kind of like a mess. Like, I wasn't like sure what was happening around me. Like it was like the company was successful in some sense, like people were running around doing things, but it was a different sort of system, not by design, but by just like thinking like, oh, just like jump in and figure it out. That doesn't allow you to build an intentional culture. It doesn't allow you to set people up for success or to like let people actually hit the ground running by any means.
Yeah. And is there, as leaders make that transition from that chief everything officer to actually trying to move towards that chief executive officer, I think there's a challenge or friction point in the balance between vision and then day-to-day execution.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you have seen either work well or just be a consistent challenge that you see in founders having to face that dilemma? Because, with one of my businesses that we always talked about, with the day that I was working in the business or a day that I was working on the business. And I tried to make it real clear to not get drug into a day-to-day problem if I was trying to, block some time just to focus on that vision type stuff.
Yeah.
What's been your experience with that?
Yeah. It's really, that's really hard, right? Working in the business, working on the business. So gradually over time, you should spend more time working on rather than in the business. But like, how do you like create the space for that? I think some people are just really good at zooming in and zooming out. And I think how they do that is they ask for, give me the situation and the context. What is the decision we're trying to make? And if there isn't a decision on the table or something that we can do, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to like sit in the room while we talk to the client, or do you want, do you need me to like, okay, a decision? And so if you've actually allowed people to think like an owner, what that means is they were like, if it's, what should we do, as opposed to like asking the head of the company, we don't have answers, right? So a lot of people say like, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And that's hard because sometimes people don't know the solution. So you need to like ask them a bunch of questions where they get to the solution, as opposed to taking this burden, putting it on your own back and saying like, okay, great, I'll clean this up. I'll sort this out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost looking at it like a coachable moment or teachable moment there, and just trying to, I guess, help develop your team so that the next time when they come up with that, I think it's a good point of if they understand how you got to that decision, even if you're the one that made it, they see your kind of thought process talked about. Then maybe next time they go, okay, well, I know how he's going to talk through this. So this is what we'll go ahead and execute and just continue to move forward if you've, empowered them with that ability.
Yeah. And you see it in a lot of companies where you need to like create a mechanism to like share the idea. So sometimes it's a 2-minute thing. Like I just need an okay on something. And in other companies, right, there's a lot of successful companies that are built on a culture of writing and documentation. And it's like, this is what we want to do. This is why we're doing it. Here are some of the issues. Here's some of the risks. Here's why it might not work. Here's the pre-mortem, right? Like in which case you're like getting expensive time, a lot of heads around the table to make a really like good decision in the moment. That is like one of the things that you can, again, like it's a communication system, right? Stripe does that. Amazon does that, right? These companies have a culture of like writing a memo. I've seen people from those companies go to other startups. Among some of the executives I've coached, like they say like, yeah, we don't like do memos, or we don't do like write-ups here, but I'm just going to do one because like that's what we're missing to frame everybody's mind. So again, like I'm not saying that the Amazon culture is going to work in your or my business, but there are things that people have like developed over time that fill in that gap of like structured thinking, and here's how we approach a decision, and here's the information we need to be able to make a call, because that's it. Otherwise, it's important for people to like know how you think, as you said, in order to set things up.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I'm a big fan of the frameworks. I mean, me and Andrew, we come from military background, to where everything had a process. Everything was very driven by those protocols or SOPs. And now we've tried to translate that into things that are more, business appropriate. But it's all grounded in, if you know how you made that decision, if you know kind of how we got there, it frees up the leader to make higher level decisions and forecasting, and pushing down that decision-making ability to your team and letting them do that.
Yeah. One of the things you bring up is like having good process. And this is really important when you're in an environment of uncertainty. And so certainly in the military, you have situations where there's a lot of uncertainty. You do it, right? And what do you do that? You have to trust the process. You have to trust your training. You have to, right?
What else can you do, right?
Right. And that's the thing is when I work with founders, I ask them, okay, what's the process by which you want to do this? Are you writing this down in a playbook? Do you have like a Notion document that other people can see, right? It doesn't have to be an elaborate like workflow that looks like something you'd see in a giant company. But by doing that, you allow people to like say, oh, okay, there's thing I can follow. There's something that we can go back to and do differently. And that's because, we're operating in an environment of great uncertainty at times.
Yeah.
I like that, because it circles back around to, enablement, right? If you give people a framework of how you, the founder, works, thinks, processes, accepts, decides, rejects, that allows them to do the same, right, within those kind of boundaries. So I think that's a great tip there, a great point. So I was going to kind of take a little bit of a left turn here.
Yeah, let's do it.
And ask about resilience.
Yeah.
So as a founder, a lot of risk out there, right? And you're going to make a lot of mistakes, right? Because it talks about, right, what works in Orlando is not going to work in Miami, right? So developing the resiliency muscle, how difficult can that actually be? And what are some ways that a founder can work to overcome that mental block of that?
Yeah, it's a daily roller coaster of like you do something and it was really, really good and you're really happy, and then like something went wrong, or this didn't work, or it's like you get that email, right? So you're going like up and down all day. So like this can be, awful. It can make you sick to your stomach, right? Like a roller coaster, or, it could be kind of fun and wild. And, I think people, who develop resiliency realize like, hey, I survived this thing, our product crashed. This thing was delivered late. Like, yes, we learned from that and we fixed it, right? And so the resiliency is like, it's okay, I can try this again. Or the feeling, hey, we survived that. That wasn't so bad. Like, let's keep going, right? Like, so I think having a way to remind ourselves of that is really important, but it is emotionally difficult. It means that you need to have people in your life that support you because there's a lot of stress or loneliness or things like that. And you need to have like, something that is restorative to that emotional toll. So it doesn't matter if that's a hobby, it can be exercise, it can be getting like lots of sleep and eating right. Because what I have shared with a number of founders, including people who are, it's just like a 2-person or 4-person team sometimes, is you, the founder, are the single biggest point of failure right now in the company. So how would you de-risk that for the business? It might be doing something that puts gas back in the tank so that you can go further.
That's great.
That's my framework around resilience. I think like for other people, it might be something very specific. You've got to like meditate, or you've got to like do a cold plunge every morning. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you, but figuring out what is your thing that is restorative is so important.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, that is interesting to look at as the founder is that single point of risk. Like that is something that you have to mitigate. And so it goes back to, making that decision, coming up with your process. And so it's interesting how circular that is as well.
Yeah.
Of maintaining, you got to maintain yourself just to maintain the organization. So
for sure. Yeah.
Well, Vijay, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah. And this is really appreciate you spending some time with us today to talk through this and share your experiences in leadership. And I know you've got your book is out there, The Funding Framework, and your website.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Got a picture of it there. MyStartupSystem.com.
That's right.
And so if people want to reach out to you so you get more information about you and your services there, definitely want to point them in the right direction.
Thank you. Yeah. And things that I put on mystartupsystem.com are a template that I was able to buy code, which allows people to create like funding decks. Similarly, there's actually a digital twin there where that's trained on the book. You can ask questions about like, hey, how could I think about the total addressable market of my business or something like that, right? I am trying to walk the talk and innovate myself in terms of some of the tools that I'm creating there for the startup founder.
I'll tell you what, I've got 100 more questions for you, but we probably don't have time for that. If you're ever down in Austin, you let me know.
That'd be fun.
And we'll go visit the Capital Factory and we can spread the gospel to all the founders there.
Incredible. Andrew, Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
As always, take these lessons, use them, and spread them. Everyone is welcome in the cohort.
Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more, and drop us a line at commandpostcohort.com to request a specific topic.
We'll see you next time on the cohort.